This is a call and response song. I sing the line and you sing it back to me. We wait for you to reveal yourself through each other, through the world, through all creation, through our people, our souls cry out to be joined in you. Gentle God, breathe in us, each of us, your truth. Gentle God, breathe in us. Gentle God, breathe in us.
So there is a man named Walter Brueggemann, who's a man who's studied the Bible for a long, long time and thought about it a lot. And he says this: people are not changed by rules. The deep places in our lives, places of resistance and embrace, are not reached by instruction. They are reached only by stories, by images and metaphors that show the world differently. And in L'Arche, we know a lot about this because we're always telling stories of our friendships all the time. And this gives witness to the way that God is transforming our hearts. And we know that Jesus was an exceptional teacher. He helped people to learn and grow by sharing with them stories that could help them imagine new possibilities in their relationships with God and others. And that's exactly what he does in this story today. I think it's most familiar to us as the story of the Good Samaritan, but today we're calling it the story of the Good Stranger. And it's a story that's known not just by religious people, but people across all of society. Everyone knows that a Good Samaritan is someone who, without thinking of themselves, reaches out to help another who's in need. And there are many beautiful pieces of art that show the power of this story in simple images. And I love the images from our story today, but I want to show you just a few other images. And before I do that, I just want to make an apology because I got this artwork off the internet and I couldn't find out who the artists were, but I want to give thanks for their beautiful work. So these are a few images of the Good Samaritan, and I invite you just to look at them. But let's return to our story of the Good Stranger. And I want to look at the four main characters in this story. And I'm going to give them names because that just makes them easier to talk about. So the first character I'm going to call Bailey. And as we heard Patrick read, he was going on a story. And Bailey's walking along with his donkey when he's attacked by robbers and left badly injured by the side of the road. He must have been so alone and scared, and he's hurting. Perhaps he's wondering, what's going to happen to me now? And as Bailey is longing for someone to help him, he sees a bishop and a judge walk by. But they walk past him, the very people that he thought would help him. He must have felt so helpless and hopeless. And then he sees a foreigner, a stranger coming down the road, and his heart sinks because he thinks, this guy's not going to help me. But as we know from the story, Bailey's wrong about this stranger. So that's the first character, Bailey. And the second and third characters in the story are the bishop, who I'm going to call Bishop Drew, and the judge, who I'm going to call Judge Jesse. And maybe Bishop Drew thought, if I stop and help this bleeding man, I'm going to get my expensive robes dirty, and I'll have to go and clean up, and then how will I ever be on time to lead the people in worship? So many are depending on me. And maybe Judge Jesse was on his way to hear an important case in court. And if he stopped to help the man, the time in court could be given to another. He had to be responsible and get there. Others were waiting for him. But maybe both Bishop Drew and Judge Jesse were also aware of their surroundings, the dangerous road, the well-known presence of robbers on the road. Was the man lying there actually a trap? If they went to help him, would the robbers come and attack them? Martin Luther King Jr., the great civil rights leader, says about the main questions of that says that the main question of the bishop and the judge was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? Of course, the fourth character is the good stranger, who I'm going to call Asher. And he's from a religion and culture that's not just different, but despised by the people who would be listening to this story. And in fact, before Jesus tells this story in Luke's gospel, he and his disciples have visited a village full of these strangers, and they were not welcomed. And maybe that's one of the reasons Jesus tells the story. It's to help the disciples leave behind their resentment and prejudice about those who are different than them. But this stranger, Asher, is not like those in the village encountered by Jesus and his disciples. And he's not like the bishop and the judge. He's alive in a way that other characters aren't. And he's paying attention. And he allows his heart to be touched with compassion for poor Bailey. Asher treats Bailey as a family member or a good friend, even though they don't speak the same language. The only language that matters here are the kind and caring actions of Asher. These acts of compassion break down all the language and cultural barriers between the men, and they communicate all that's necessary. That Asher wants to care for Bailey as a fellow human being. And it seems that Asher, like the bishop and the judge, was a busy man. He's on his way somewhere, and so he leaves Bailey in the care of an innkeeper and says he will be back to check on him and pay for his care. Again, Martin Luther King Jr. says, the good stranger's question, Asher's question, is, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? So Jesus tells this story in response to a question from a person who's searching to know God better and wants to know how to live a good life. And after ending the story, Jesus asks this man a question. Who do you think was a good neighbor? And the man answers, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus responds, go and do likewise. Go and do the same for others. Be merciful. Go and do likewise. Our call as people of faith is to pay attention to those around us who may be in need and to respond in the universal language, which is loving action. So how can we be good neighbors to one another? In fact, who are our neighbors? You know, in this time of pandemic, when we're so restricted in our contacts with others, perhaps our neighbors are in fact the people that we live with, our housemates, our parents, our siblings, our spouses. And you know, there are thousands of ways we can be good neighbors to one another. And it will be unique to each one of us. You know, the way I'm a good neighbor will be different from the way you're a good neighbor. And that's a beautiful thing. And we have such good examples, don't we, in our community of how to be a good neighbor. I love the story about David Harmon giving Joe Child a back rub. David was attentive. He saw that Joe was tired, and he acted with great simplicity and tenderness in reaching out to Joe. He was a good neighbor. My experience of Harrison Schlichter, Helen's beloved father, was that he really paid attention to you and listened to you. And he shared his wonderful curiosity about life. And you couldn't help but feel more alive around him. Harrison was a good neighbor. And Helen, with her love of the beauty of creation, carries the same sense of aliveness too, and shares that with the people around her. In this way, she is also a good neighbor. You know, the Good Stranger story invites us not only to reach out with acts of kindness and mercy to those who are in need, it also shows us that we become more alive when we are focused on others and not on ourselves. To act like a good neighbor is, of course, good for others, but we also get more life for ourselves when we do that. So there is, in fact, blessing upon blessing. So let us be bold, let us be merciful, and let us be good neighbors.
Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Well, I've got a land in glory land that outshines the sun. I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. Look away beyond the blue. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Dear Lord, oh dear Lord, oh do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Look away beyond the blue. Look away beyond the blue.